Hello everyone. Today let's review the journey to the marriage registration of CEO Jack and lytutien. The kitchen smelled of lemongrass and ginger. Jack's mother moved around the tiled space in her floral apron slicing mangoes and humming an old folk song when Jack and Tu Tien walked in. Holding hands, she looked up with a knowing smile. "We have some news," Jack said, grinning. His mother put down the knife and turned to them, wiping her hands. Tu Tien hesitated, then stepped forward. "We registered for marriage, Mom." There was a pause, just a heartbeat, then Jack's mother beamed. She walked over and cupped Tu Tien's cheeks. "Finally," she said. "You've been family from the." Jack adjusted his tie nervously as he stood in front of the small cafe where they first met. In his hand was a bouquet of white lilies in a small velvet box with a simple yet elegant diamond ring inside. Lytutien arrived, her eyes lighting up as she saw Jack waiting by the flowers. Tied back, the smile she gave him was soft but cautious. She had been through enough to know love wasn't always what it seemed. "Jack, what's all this?" He didn't say a word. Instead, he handed her the flowers, knelt down on one knee, and opened the ring box. "Tien," he began, his voice steady, "I know life hasn't been kind to you. I know your heart has been broken before, but I promise you this: if you choose me, I'll protect you, love you, and never let you go. Will you marry me?" He gasped. Her hands trembled. "You really want to marry me?" "Even though I want to marry you because you're you," he interrupted. "You deserve a new beginning with someone who never gives up on you." Tears welled up in her eyes. She nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes, Jack, I do." One sunny morning, Jack took Tien to meet his mother, Mrs. Mai, in the garden behind her quiet suburban house. Jack's mother was watering her orchids. When they arrived, she turned and smiled gently. "Mom," Jack said, putting an arm around Tien's shoulders, "we have something to tell you." Mrs. Mai paused, looking from her son to the quiet woman beside him. "We're getting married," he announced, "and Tien is expecting." Mrs. Mai blinked, taken aback, then slowly her smile returned. "I see," she said softly, stepping closer to Tien. "May I?" She reached out and touched Tien's hand. "You've been through a lot, haven't dear?" Tien nodded. "Then let me say this," Mrs. Mai continued, her voice steady. "If my son has chosen you, and you've chosen him, then I'll stand by your side. Family means everything, and I'm proud to welcome you into ours." Tien lowered her eyes, overcome with emotion. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. The wedding was held in a sunlit garden behind Jack's company office, filled with flowers, friends, and the warm support of everyone who loved them. Tien wore a flowing ivory gown, her baby bump just barely visible beneath the fabric. Jack wore a tailored suit and couldn't stop smiling. Jack's mother sat in the front row, holding hands with a tall, quiet man with salt and pepper hair, her mysterious companion, Mr. Kai. No one knew much about him, but he had a kind face and a quiet devotion to Mrs. Mai that couldn't be faked. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted. Jack kissed his bride gently, both of them glowing with joy. That night, under a sky filled with stars, they danced barefoot on the grass, whispering dreams to each other for the future. 1 month after the wedding, Jack invited Tien to join him on a site inspection of a new eco-resort project in the mountains. They drove through winding forest roads, the sun shining through the pine trees. Tien, now visibly pregnant, leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. "This feels like a second honeymoon," she whispered after touring the site. Walking among blueprints and construction tools, they decided to stop at a small roadside cafe, an old bamboo hut overlooking a serene lake. As they sipped cold drinks and watched the sky fade to gold, Jack suddenly paused. Across the room sat his mother with none other than Mr. Kai. They sat close together, hands touching lightly, speaking in low voices. Jack and Tien exchanged glances quietly, observing. Then they heard it, Kai's voice, clear and calm. "We've lived apart for decades, but when I saw you again, I realized growing old doesn't mean we stop loving. I want to spend every day I have left by your side. Will you let me?" Mrs. Mai didn't answer right away. Then softly, "When I was young, I waited for someone to hold my hand, but no one came. Now I'm older, and someone finally has. I'm not letting go." Jack walked over gently, placing a hand on his mother's shoulder. She looked up, startled, but then smiled. "You have my blessing, Mom," Jack said. "You deserve to be happy." Tien joined him, taking Mrs. Mai's hand. "We're all starting new chapters," she said, "and this one feels just right." They sat together by the lake until the sky turned indigo laughter and conversation blending with the rustling of leaves, two couples, two generations, and a shared understanding of second chances driving. Back to the city under a star-dotted sky, the SUV hummed gently along the empty road. Tien rested, her head on Jack's shoulder, her hand cradling her belly. Jack, she murmured, if it's a boy I want to name him Min, if it's a girl, either way they'll grow up surrounded by love, right? Jack nodded, one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped around hers. Absolutely, he said, whatever comes next we face it together. I'll build us a home, I'll build our future. Outside, the lights of the city slowly came into view, soft and welcoming. Their journey was far from over, but it had finally begun. And somewhere in the quiet of that night, between the road ahead and the stars above, the sound of a child's laughter echoed in their dreams. In the afternoon, the sun hung quietly in the sky. Lytutien's small house, nestled on the outskirts of town, was silent except for the sound of the wind rustling through the treetops. The atmosphere was still. Her father, Mr. Lai, quietly stepped out of the house, a plump pen slung over his shoulder, and Tien's old bicycle held in his hand. He glanced around cautiously before hurrying toward the dirt path that led to the market. Ever since Tien had left home to hide after the suspicious accident, Mr. Lai had grown increasingly strange. He showed no grief, no concern, only preoccupation with his own calculations. In the yard, the SA he had raised for over 6 months was also herded onto a rented three-wheeled cart from a distance. Their neighbor, Mrs. T, watched and shook her head with a sigh. What kind of father is that? His daughter barely escaped death and hasn't even returned home yet, is already selling off all her belongings. Mr. Lai didn't care. He sold everything, the hen, the pig, and the bicycle, pocketed the cash, and disappeared into his usual drinking haunt near the market entrance. Jack, Tien's husband, had just received news she had finally regained consciousness after days in a coma at a remote mountain hospital. She had been pushed off a cliff during a work trip, but miraculously survived thanks to a local villager who found and rescued her. Jack immediately hit the road. The black car sped along winding mountain roads. Inside Jack was a storm of emotion, worry, rage, anticipation. The image of Tien's pale face and gentle eyes filled his mind. He arrived on a misty morning. The stilt house where Tien was recovering lay nestled deep within the forested mountains. She stepped out when she heard the sound of the car. Their eyes met for a moment before Jack rushed forward and wrapped her in his arms. Silent tears streamed down his cheeks. Are you all right? I'm so sorry I wasn't there when it happened. Tien shook her head, voice trembling. I just want to go home, but I'm scared of my father and that man. Jack held her hand tightly. I'll protect you. We'll go home, but we won't be alone. The black car rolled down the mountain again. Unbeknownst to them, a motorbike was trailing at just the right distance. On it sat a man wearing a full face helmet, his eyes behind the dark visor cold and calculating. He had been shadowing Jack for days. He was the man behind the accident, a gangster who had once done shady business with Tien's father. He had been hired to deal with her after she accidentally uncovered illegal land deals her father was involved in. Now he couldn't let her return alive. He had to finish the job. Meanwhile, Jack, already suspicious that someone was tailing him, quietly contacted a police acquaintance. He sent his current GPS location and vehicle details, relaying the entire story. As their car reached the outskirts of the city, the police were already in position. They had set up covert surveillance at key junctions, tracking Jack's and the pursuers' movements as planned. Jack stopped at a roadside gas station. The man thought his moment had come. He pulled over, drew a folding knife from his pocket, and waited for Jack and Tien to exit the car. But as he stepped out from his hiding spot, 3 plainclothes officers swarmed him. He struggled, slashing out with the knife, but was quickly subdued. Jack pulled Tien behind him, shielding her with his body. One officer stepped forward and spoke quickly. We've been tracking this man for some time. Thank you for your cooperation. He has a criminal record and has worked for a smuggling gang. Tien trembled and clung to Jack. He held her tightly, whispering, it's going to be all right from now on. No one will ever hurt you again. The sun blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the modest home on the outskirts of the city. Inside, Mr. Lai, father of Lytutien, moved stealthily with his daughter absent for Months presumed dead after a tragic accident, he saw an opportunity. He corralled the chickens into cages, tied the squealing pig securely, and wheeled out Tu Tien's cherished bicycle, the one she'd ridden throughout her university years. She's not coming back, he muttered, eyes devoid of remorse. Better to sell these than let them go to waste. Loading the animals and bicycle onto a borrowed cart, he set off for the market, leaving behind a home stripped of its warmth and memories in a secluded mountain village. Jack navigated his SUV along the rugged path leading to a small wooden cabin. Inside, Titan sat by the window, her arm bandaged, eyes gazing into the distance. Hearing the vehicle approach, she stepped outside, disbelief washing over tea, and sat quietly by the window, a cup of hot ginger tea in her hand, steaming gently. The gray sky outside couldn't wash away the storm inside her chest. Memories surged in like a cold autumn gust, slicing through the heart of the 32-year-old woman with invisible blades. Over 30 years in an orphanage, she had never known her parents during mid-autumn festivals or Lunar New Year when other children received gifts and messages from family. She only had a small cookie and a silent wish to one day call someone mother or father with love. One autumn afternoon, while shelving books in the library, a middle-aged man walked in. His eyes were heavy as if he carried mountains behind them. He stared at her for a long time before speaking. His voice, Tien, is that you? She froze. The breeze from the window sent a chill down her spine. The man claimed to be her biological father. Titan didn't know whether to feel joy or fear. She shook her head in denial, but he began to recount stories only someone close to her past could know. He showed her old photos, a scarf she wore as a child, pieces of a puzzle she never thought she'd find. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind was a battlefield. If he's really my father, then why did he abandon me for so many years? Still, her soft heart overpowered her suspicion. She agreed to meet him again. Each time he remained quiet for long stretches before speaking. One time he cried, and in a moment of weakness she called him father. He hugged her tightly, trembling like a lost child. In that fleeting second, her heart felt warm again. She believed in miracles. Scene 2. Jack's suspicion. Jack, with his calm demeanor and deep-set eyes sharpened by years in the construction industry, was not someone easily shaken, but the way his wife trembled while recounting her first meeting with her supposed father disturbed him. He wasn't a man of many words. He didn't voice his doubts, but inside his instincts screamed. Part of him wanted to believe, to see Tien smile like she did on their wedding day, but another part couldn't ignore the inconsistencies, the vague details, the way the man conveniently avoided the topic of her mother. That night, Tien developed a fever. Jack rushed out to buy medicine, brewed ginger water, and gently pressed a cold towel to her forehead. In the soft glow of the living room light, he sat silently by the window, thoughts churning. The next morning, as Tien slept, Jack picked up the phone. He called an old friend, an investigator who had once worked with him on a collapsed building case. I need your help. Look into a man claiming to be my wife's father. What he learned chilled him to the bone. The man had changed his name multiple times over 2 decades, was linked to fraud cases, and had once been on a nationwide wanted list. The details were sparse, but it was enough. Jack knew this man didn't come back out of guilt or love. 3 days later, the man disappeared. No calls, no messages. Tien panicked. She went from place to place, restaurants, gas stations, roadside inns, hoping someone had seen him. Finally, she remembered the old wooden house in the outskirts where she once took him during a storm, a rundown place hidden among scattered trees. As she approached the house, she froze. Voices carried from inside. We need to act soon. The girl knows too much. If she keeps digging, we're finished. It was her father's voice, unmistakable, and another man's, deeper and colder. Her body stiffened. She took a step back, but accidentally stepped on a dry twig. Cracked. The door flung open. 2 figures burst out like predators. Who's there? Panicked, Tien fled into the woods. She ran hard, pounding, sobbing as branches scratched her skin. The question repeated like a mantra, why does he want to kill me? Her foot slipped. The ground vanished beneath her. She tumbled down a steep slope. Pain exploded across her shoulder and skull. As she crashed onto the rocks below, blood dripped into her eyes. She fumbled for her phone. With her last strength, she dialed Jack's number. The screen lit up, calling, then darkness. Jack was reviewing a blueprint when his phone vibrated. A missed call from Tien. His stomach dropped without a second Thought he grabbed his coat and keys racing toward. The outskirts rain had begun to fall fat heavy. Drops that beat against the windshield like war. Drums with a flashlight in hand. Jack scoured the roadside forest shouting her name, then he saw it. Blood stains, broken branches, a long skid on the muddy slope. He slid down, mud soaking his clothes, and there she was lying unconscious in the mud, blood smeared across her forehead. 10. He screamed, cradling her. She stirred, whispering, "They want to kill me." "I know," he said. "I've got you now." Jack carried her through the woods to a small cave, a place he once surveyed during a construction project. Inside, he started a fire, patched her wounds with a first aid kit, and wrapped her in his coat. That night the rain roared. Outside the cave, they said nothing, just held each other, but Jack made a vow in silence: "I will bring the truth into the light, no matter the cost." At dawn, the sun pierced through the clouds and lit the cave in soft gold. Jack carried Tu Tien back to the car, shielding her with his jacket. After settling her in bed at home, he went straight to the police. A meeting was held that night. Tu Tien recounted everything: the betrayal, the conversation she overheard, the fall. Jack presented a crucial piece of evidence. Her phone had captured the entire conversation. He had secretly installed a background audio recorder weeks before, worried something like this might happen. The recording was crystal clear. It wasn't just attempted murder. It exposed a web of crimes: forged identities, fraudulent asset sales, and manipulation. Under the guise of a long-lost parent, police launched a full-scale investigation. Jack offered all the data he'd gathered: offshore accounts, suspicious transfers, aliases. Her father, when Vien wasn't just a con man, he was a linchpin in a larger criminal operation, exploiting vulnerable families, stealing land and pensions, always staying one. The night was thick with fog, the city lights blurred through the veil of mist. In an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Lytutien lay bound and bruised, her spirit refusing to break despite the pain she endured. She had been kidnapped days ago. The captives, masked and cold, never spoke much, but she knew this wasn't random. Someone wanted her gone somewhere across the city. Jack, a renowned civil engineer and CEO of one of the leading construction firms, stared grimly at his office monitors. His jaw clenched as he reviewed the footage from street cameras and the signal traced from Tu Tien's phone before it went dead. "I will find you," he whispered, "no matter what it takes, with the help of his private security team and the city cyber task force." Jack narrowed down the location. He arrived just in time. The gunfight was brief. Jack himself burst through the doors, a fury in his eyes. He found her weak but alive as he untied her tight and looked up, her lips trembling. "Jack, you found me." "I always will," he said, lifting her gently into his arms. The morning after, Tu Tien's rescue police cars lined the entrance of the warehouse. Forensics teams swept through the scene, collecting fingerprints, prints, and any trace evidence that could point to the mastermind. Jack stood to the side, arms crossed, face grim. He had given the officers everything he knew, from the threats Tu Tien had received weeks ago to the name of a former employee he suspected. "We've confirmed the identity of one of the kidnappers. The lead detective said his name is PCHM Kukbo X. 3 months ago for misconduct." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Then he didn't act alone. Someone paid him, someone who knew Tu Tien's schedule and mine." "We believe so." The detective nodded. "We're tracking his last known movements. If you're right, this goes deeper than we thought." That same afternoon, a high-speed chase tore through District 7. Police units pursued a black SUV registered under a fake identity. One linked to PM Kukbo. The suspect eventually crashed into a barrier and was apprehended. Blooded and defiant, he glared at the officers. "You think you've stopped it? You don't know who you're dealing with." Back at the station, he refused to speak until Jack himself requested to face him under supervision. Jack entered the interrogation room. He sat across from Bo, the tension thick in the air. "Why her?" Jack asked calmly. "Why Tu Tien?" Bo chuckled bitterly. "Because she's the key. She doesn't know it yet. But they do, and they want her gone before she finds out." The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Tu Tien sat on a cushioned chair inside the police department's interview room, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Across from her sat Detective Lu, a woman in her early 40s, known for her calm yet unrelenting approach. A recording device on the table blinked. "Read." "Tu Tien," she began gently, "we know this is difficult, But your testimony could help us stop whoever is behind this. Tu Tien took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly. I'll try. Let's start with the moment you were taken, said Detective L. It was late afternoon. I was leaving the bookstore near my apartment. A van pulled up. I thought nothing of it until someone grabbed me from behind. They covered my mouth and dragged me in. She paused, the memory tightening her chest. Did you hear any names, accents, anything? One of them called the other. Oh, the one who hit me. I think he was in charge. What did they want from you? Tu Tien hesitated. They asked if I'd met someone from my past. They kept saying, you don't deserve the truth. You were never meant to know. The detective exchanged a glance with her colleague behind the glass window. This was more than personal, it was orchestrated. Did they mention Jack? Yes, Tien whispered. They said he was protecting me from something, that he knew more than he told me. Detective leaned forward. We'll protect you now, but we need to uncover the full story. Are you ready to hear the truth, even if it changes everything? Tien nodded slowly. Rain poured over the city like the sky itself was mourning. In a remote suburb, Lytutien stood alone in the dimly lit kitchen of their villa. She had survived yet another close brush with death, but this time it was no random incident. It was a direct attack. The man known only as Snake Fong, a mercenary with a bloody past, had managed to slip away from police pursuit, but instead of fleeing the country, he doubled back, stormed into Zishan's home, and nearly ended her life. Fortunately, she fought back fiercely. Jack, her husband and CEO of a top construction company, arrived just in time with the police. Snake Fong vanished into the night, wounded but alive, back at the Special Investigation Division. Lieutenant Colonel Deng Van House surveyed a large corkboard filled with photos, notes, and diagrams. Snake Fong isn't working alone. How? Muttered someone with deep pockets and influence is behind him, analyzing financial records from Snake Fong's burner phones and digital wallets. The team uncovered a series of anonymous transactions. All payments followed a pattern. Each came right after one of Xian's life-threatening incidents. The trail led them to a luxury hotel downtown, where a major business conference had been held. Surveillance footage showed 3 individuals who may have connections. Tranio, my CFO of Vimax Land Corporation; Lyhoaica Bao, chairman of a materials firm, formerly linked to Jack Fanvi, a former employee at Xian's old media company. Surveil them all. How? Ordered, and if they so much as twitch, bring them in. That night, in their villa, Xian sat by the window, haunted. The break-in rattled her to the core. Her mind replayed Snake Fong's chilling whisper. It was someone you trust. Jack brought over a thick file. You remember? Fanvi. Zishan nodded. Of course, he was in strategic planning, but he left after that office fire. Jack opened the folder. He didn't just leave, he joined Vimax Land soon after. That's when your troubles began. Zishan's hands trembled. He always called me his mentor. Trust me. Someone coordinated this. 6 is smart, but this is organized. Tien and Jack pored over old records, project conflicts, and media connections. Slowly, a dark web of betrayal began to take shape. Tien collapsed a few days later, started with dizziness and fevers. Doctors diagnosed her with nervous exhaustion and early-stage anxiety disorder. Jack stayed by her side. He cooked, read her favorite books, and guarded her like a sentinel. I'm sorry, she whispered one night. I didn't mean to worry you. Jack brushed her hair back gently. We'll uncover the truth together. Rain fell again. The night the police struck an encrypted IP address accessing Vimax Land's internal servers led them to a rundown building inside Tranca. Lyhoaica Bao and Fanvi argued. Snake Fong's captured. Kiyomi hissed. 6 shrugged. So what, as long as we don't talk, we're safe. The door burst open. Police raided the hideout. Bao was caught instantly. Kiyomi fled later, disappearing near a dock. 6 escaped. Again under interrogation, Bao spilled the truth. 6 planned everything. I just funded it. Someone else pulled his strings. Someone we never met. Back at home, Tien couldn't stop staring at the conspiracy board, pins, strings, photographs. It was chaos, and yet it was her life. Jack brought her a report. You need to see this. It showed a past application Vice submitted to work abroad. Tien had rejected it on ethical grounds, plagiarism. He blamed me, she murmured. Jack nodded. That's where the grudge began. Weeks passed. Police finally caught Vi's laptop contained detailed files to / and strategy / and Jack's secondary target / and high-level personnel Contacts Lieutenant How demanded answers. Who gave you these names? I looked up and smiled coldly. I was just a pawn. I never met the mastermind. They used encrypted messages they called themselves. The gatekeeper back at the Thevillagechiefhelps received an anonymous text. You're clever, but the game isn't over. The one you trust the most watches you every day. The gatekeeper. The message from the gatekeeper haunted Li Zion. The idea that someone she trusted was still watching her, perhaps even close to her, every day sent icy dread through her chest. Jack insisted on tightening security around the villa. Surveillance systems were upgraded and a cyber security firm was hired to sweep their networks. Yet paranoia seeped into every interaction. I don't even know who to trust anymore, Zion whispered. It was a night like any other, but for Tu Tien, everything was about to change. In her quiet and peaceful life with Jack, her husband, she never imagined that a single act of betrayal could drag her into a nightmare. The darkness of the city was nothing compared to the sinister plot unfolding right under her feet. Tu Tien was a woman of grace, intelligence, and beauty, but these very qualities seemed to attract the wrong kind of attention. Someone somewhere wanted her dead. She had been attacked before in the most brutal of ways, poisoned, chased, and even framed for crimes she didn't commit, but each time she survived somehow, finding her way back to safety too. Jack, but tonight was different. As she walked home from the office, an unknown car pulled up beside her, blocking her path. The man in the front seat of the car, a tall and menacing figure, didn't need to say anything. With a cold smile, he opened the door, and within seconds a dark figure grabbed her from behind, forcing her into the car. Tu Tien struggled, but it was too late. They had already taken her to a remote location, one she had never been to before. Place was dark, abandoned, with the only sound being the occasional rustle of wind against the cracked walls. Her breath was shallow and her mind raced, but there was nothing she could do. They were going to kill her. The memories of her previous escapes flashed in her mind, and she knew she couldn't wait for Jack to save her. This time, she needed to act now. But the moment she gathered her strength to fight back, something unexpected happened. On the intercom, do you really think you can escape? Tu Tien, the voice sneered. You're trapped now. There's no way out, but don't worry, this won't hurt, at least not right away. The night dragged on, and Tu Tien was locked in a cold, dark room. Her hands were tied, and her mind was racing with thoughts of how to escape. They had drugged her, and now she was at the mercy of these criminals. As they approached, she felt a terrifying wave of helplessness. Her only chance was to stall them long enough for Jack to find her. Jack, her husband, the man who had stood by her through all the horrors. He wouldn't give up on her, but how much time did she have? Suddenly, just as the men were about to make their move, there was a loud crash. The door flew open, and two police officers stormed into the room. Freeze, one of them shouted. Jack was right behind them, his eyes filled with fury and determination. Criminals had no chance. Within minutes, they were subdued, handcuffed, and taken into custody. Tu Tien, still in shock from what had just happened, collapsed into Jack's arms, her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, I thought I was going to die, Jack. I thought you wouldn't make it in time. But Jack was already holding her close, reassuring her, I will always make it in time, Tien, I promise. Despite the terrifying incident, Tu Tien's life did not go back to normal. The attack was only one of many attempts on her life. The man behind all these plots was still out there, pulling strings from the shadows. Jack knew that they had to get to the bottom of this before it was too late. Tu Tien, however, began to feel the weight of everything. She started seeing shadows in every corner, hearing footsteps in the night. She felt unsafe even in her own home. It was as if the enemies were always one step ahead, and they were coming for her again. One night, while Jack was away meeting with the police, she was alone at home. The silence felt oppressive, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Then, without warning, the phone rang. Tu Tien's heart skipped a beat. The voice on the other end was distorted, like someone trying to disguise their identity. Remember, Tu Tien, we can always find you. You can't escape us. You belong to us now. Before she could respond, the line went dead. It was then that she realized how serious things had become. The threat was real, and she needed to act fast. She couldn't wait for Jack. The sun stretched long shadows over the narrow village path as the police truck slowly came to a halt. Tu Tien sat in the back seat, her face pale, hands tightly clutched in her lap. Jack stepped down first, then turned to help her out gently. They stood before the small countryside home. The tiled roof was still there, but the yard, once full of clucking chickens and the occasional oink from pigs, was now eerily silent. Flies buzzed around broken crates. Chicken coop stood empty, its gates swinging in the wind. Tu Tien's eyes scanned everything. Her lips trembled. "Where's my chickens?" she whispered. Jack's jaw clenched. The local officer beside them sighed. "We believe the man who claimed to be your father sold them all last week at the market. Also sold the pigs and a bicycle found in the shed." Tu Tien staggered. Jack caught her. "Not only did he pretend to be my father, he took everything." She had no memories of her real parents all her life. She had lived with uncertainty about her origins. So when the man arrived, gentle, smiling, calling her my daughter, with tears in his eyes, she had wanted more than anything to believe him, and that belief had almost cost her life. The next day, Jack drove out early for a construction site inspection. He spent the morning navigating blueprints and meeting contractors, but his mind constantly drifted back to the girl left behind in that empty house. By noon, he was back at his mother's place to pick up something. His mother, a kindly woman with sharp instincts, handed him a straw basket filled with wrapped items. "Give this to Tien," she said. "She needs to know we're her family now." Jack peeked inside. Homemade shrimp paste, dried lotus tea, mung bean cakes, and a small bottle of essential oil. Kind gesture moved him. "She doesn't say it, Mom, but I know she's hurting." His mother looked up from her knitting. "Then don't just bring her food, bring her your heart, son." Jack nodded, pressing the basket close. He knew what he needed to do that afternoon. The sun was golden and warm. As Jack's pickup pulled into Tu Tien's yard, he saw her sitting on the steps, arms wrapped around her knees, face hidden behind her long hair. He approached quietly and sat beside her, brushing his shoulder lightly against hers. "I'm back," he said softly. She didn't reply, just nodded. "I checked the chicken coop," she murmured. "They didn't even clean up after slaughtering, blood still on the straw. And my bike gone, probably for scrap." Jack stayed silent. She needed to let it out. "My mom sent you something," he offered, placing the basket beside her. "She thought it might cheer you up." Tu Tien looked at the contents, eyes lingering on the bottle of essential oil and homemade foods. A small, tearful laugh escaped her lips. "Trying to help me forget with the strongest smelling foods possible, huh?" "No," she said. "Let her know she's not alone, even if everything else is gone." Tu Tien swallowed hard, then slowly nodded. "Want to clean up a bit?" Jack stood and offered his hand. "I'll rebuild the coop tomorrow. We'll start fresh." She took his hand and stood together. They swept, dusted, and cleared. Laughter broke through as Jack clumsily knocked over a pail. "I think I just discovered a fossilized chicken egg," he joked. "You better not break it, might unleash ancient poultry spirits." Construction site buzzed with the noise of drills, cranes, and chatter. Jack stood under a half-built concrete frame, his shirt damp with sweat. Clipboard in hand, he was focused, marking adjustments to the blueprint, when a familiar voice called his name. "Jack, Jack, is that really you?" He turned, startled. A woman in a light lavender blouse, hair neatly pinned back, was walking toward him with a tentative smile. Jack blinked. "Home," she laughed gently, a touch of nostalgia in her eyes. "I didn't think you'd recognize me. It's been, what, 7 years? What are you doing here?" "I moved back to town. My father's not well, so I came to help with the family shop. I heard you were heading this project." They moved to the shade of a scaffolding. Jack offered her a bottle of water from the cooler nearby. She took it, her fingers brushing his. The brief touch lingered longer than necessary. "I still remember our college days," she said. "You were always the quiet one, staying late in the lab, always lost in your designs. I used to watch you from across the classroom." Jack smiled politely. "You were always sketching in the courtyard. I remember that you were talented." Her smile faded into something softer, sadder. "I used to hope you'd notice me more, but then you met her." Lytutien. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "She's my wife, I know." Hung whispered, stepping closer. "But I have to say this, I always wondered, what if I had spoken up back then? Would you have chosen me?" Jack stiffened. "Hung, I respect our past, but the present is clear. I love my wife." She looked away, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come, but sometimes the heart holds on to what the mind knows it shouldn't." Jack said nothing, torn between discomfort and sympathy. That same afternoon, Lytutien packed a neat lunch of grilled pork, pickled vegetables, and rice. She added a thermos of jackfruit tea and wrapped it all in a floral cloth Jack had. Skipped breakfast, and she knew he wouldn't stop for lunch unless someone made him arriving at the construction site. She greeted a few workers. She knew asking where Jack was one pointed toward the east wing where temporary office sheds were. As she approached, she heard voices soft, intimate. She slowed her pace. I always wondered what if I had spoken up back then, would you have chosen me? Hung's voice floated through the thin aluminum walls. Tu Tien froze, then Jack's voice. I love my wife. A pause, but not enough. Through the open window, she saw Hung's hand lightly rest on Jack's arm, and Jack did not pull away immediately. The lunchbox slipped from her hand, clattering softly on the ground. Jack turned startled. Tu Tien, she stared at him, eyes wide with hurt, then turned and walked briskly back toward the street. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. Tu Tien stood at the sink rinsing vegetables, her motions methodical and distant. Jack entered slowly, placing the repaired lunchbox on the table. Tien, can we talk? She didn't look up. You should eat. Jack approached. What you saw, what you heard, it's not what you think. She finally looked at him, her eyes unreadable. So she didn't say why she loved you. You didn't let her touch you. He hesitated. She said something, but I made it clear I love you. I didn't invite her. I didn't know she would show up. Tu Tien placed the lettuce down and wiped her hands on a towel. Jack, she said quietly, I've lived a life full of liars. My fake father, my neighbors, my relatives. The only person I ever believed in was you. Jack stepped closer, then keep believing. She didn't answer. Hi everyone, thank you for visiting my channel. Please subscribe to stay updated with the latest news about Tu Tien and Jack. Thanks so much. Let me know if you'd like a more casual or formal version. A quiet evening at an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. Soft golden lights enveloped the warm romantic space to the tune of an old French love song. Tu Tien stood frozen behind the glass door. She couldn't believe her eyes. Jack, the man she loved deeply, the one who had shared countless hardships with her, was kneeling on one knee, holding up a sparkling ring in front of a strange woman. Jang applause erupted around them. People smiled and congratulated them, but for Tu Tien, the world had just crumbled beneath her feet. They had endured so many storms together, from the early days of their careers when Jack was just a rookie engineer and she was a fledgling architecture. In turn, they had pulled all-nighters to meet deadlines, battled stress, and faced devastating career failures. Jack had always been her rock. She trusted him completely and never once doubted his love. Tears welled up as she turned and ran from the restaurant like a lost soul. The cold wind couldn't soothe the pain in her chest. When she reached home, she shut the door, slid down onto the cold tiled floor, and cried her heart out. Memories of her and Jack flashed before her eyes, from late nights working on projects to warm hugs on chilly evenings. It all felt like a beautiful dream betrayed the next afternoon. As sunlight streamed through the window into the quiet room, the doorbell rang. Exhausted, Tu Tien dragged herself to answer it. Standing at the door was Min, a college friend and someone who had once secretly loved her. Min gave her a gentle smile. It's been a while. I happened to be in the area and thought I dropped by. Tu Tien hesitantly invited him, and she hadn't planned to open up, but his genuine concern broke through her walls. Eventually, she told him everything. Min listened quietly, his deep eyes filled with sympathy. When she finished, he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You've been through too much. Whatever Jack's reasons were hurting you like that wasn't right. Tu Tien rested her head on his shoulder and let the tears fall again. But this time, at least, she wasn't alone. That night, distressed Jack drove to Tu Tien's apartment. He had tried calling her repeatedly with no answer. His heart was full of worry. He needed to explain. When he arrived, he knocked. No answer, but the door was unlocked. He stepped inside and froze in the living room. Min was wiping tears from Tu Tien's face. She rested her head on Min's shoulder, the two of them sharing a quiet, intimate moment. Jack's heart sank. A wave of anger rushed through him. So this is it. I came rushing here to explain, and you two jumped up. Panic jackets. Not what it looks like, Min quickly added. You've misunderstood. I'm just here as a friend. She was really hurting. There's nothing more to it. But Jack didn't stay to listen. He turned and walked out, leaving Tu Tien standing there heartbroken. A week later, Jack couldn't take the torment any longer. He came to see Tu Tien again, this time with a video. It was a recording of the mock proposal with Jang in it. Jack clearly said, "This is just a rehearsal. I want everything to be perfect when I propose to Tu Tien." Jang is helping me practice. She's just a friend. Tu Tien was stunned. Emotions surged within her. She cried, partly from relief, partly from guilt. I'm so sorry. Early morning, gentle sunlight streamed through the window of Lu Tien's small apartment. The city was still waking up, filled only with birds chirping and distant traffic sounds. In the soft golden light, Tu Tien sat before the mirror, her hand resting lightly on her belly. In unconscious, yet loving gesture, the pregnancy test, with 2 clear lines, still lay on the table. She had checked it over and over, tears quietly falling. As joy and emotion overwhelmed her heart, she took a deep breath and dialed Jack's number. After a few rings, he answered, his voice still a bit tired from just waking up. Hello, Tien, it's early. Is something wrong? Tu Tien smiled softly, her voice trembling with excitement. Jack, I have good news. That night, I think I'm pregnant. There was a long silence on the other end. Jack froze. He sat up abruptly from his desk. He had been working late last night, finishing designs for a new project. But now all deadlines, numbers, and blueprints felt meaningless. Are you serious? Jack stammered. Yes, I tested 3 times, all positive. I'm planning to go get checked for sure. But before she finished, Jack jumped up laughing as he grabbed his car keys. Wait for me. I'm coming to get you. Let's go to the hospital right now, but you still have work. Nothing's more important than you and our baby. Tu Tien smiled, eyes watering though not yet married, and with a journey still ahead. In that moment, the whole world seemed to pause, welcoming the tiny life beginning inside her. Jack drove like the wind. His familiar silver SUV glided through the morning streets, merging into the bustling flow of people starting their day. When he arrived at Tu Tien's place, he didn't even need to ring. She was already waiting by the gate, clutching her purse tightly, eyes full of anticipation. On the way, silence filled the car, not tense, but full of overwhelming emotions. Neither knew what to say. Each was lost in their own world. A new world beginning from those 2 red lines at the hospital. Jack held Tu Tien's hand tightly. They went to the maternity ward, took a number, and sat on a long row of chairs. Around them were other couples, some with large baby bumps, others as anxious as they were. Do you think maybe it's a mistake? Jack whispered, eyes worried. I don't know, but I feel something different. So sacred. Jack squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, we'll get through it together. Tu Tien was called. She stood, took a deep breath, and looked back at Jack. He smiled encouragingly. I'll wait right here. Don't worry. The ultrasound room door closed. Jack sat outside, heartburning. Countless images filled his mind. A baby with Tu Tien's eyes, curly hair like his own, laughter ringing through their small home. 15 minutes felt like a century. Then the door opened. Tu Tien stepped out, a radiant smile mixed with tears. She said nothing, just nodded. Jack jumped up. Really? I'm really pregnant. And the doctor said the baby is very healthy. Heartbeat clear, 5 weeks along. Jack wanted to shout with joy. He embraced Tu Tien tightly. Amid all the onlookers at that moment, it was just them and the tiny life growing inside her. Tu Tien invited Jack to her home. The apartment was small but cozy. As soon as Jack arrived, he called his mother Mom. I'm going to be a dad. Tu Tien pregnant. On the other end, Mrs. Hong, Jack's mother, was silent for a moment, then burst out laughing. Really? Oh my. That means I'm going to be a grandmother. Wait. I'm coming over right away. I'll cook a feast to celebrate. She came with her new boyfriend Hong, a gentle man. They brought crabs, shrimp, fresh vegetables, and a bottle of red wine. The dinner was lively and warm, like a real family gathering. Jack's mother never hid her affection for Tu Tien since. Knowing her son loved her, she often said as long as Tu Tien loved Jack sincerely, she would treat her as her own daughter. And now, hearing about the baby, she was even happier than when she was pregnant herself. Tu Tien sat next to her, feeling for the first time what it meant to be embraced by a mother. She had been orphaned since childhood, never knowing what a mother's arms felt like. That moment, tears welled up. Night fell. Jack stood on Tu Tien's balcony, gazing at the starry sky. Suddenly, memories surged within him. During his college days in the U.S., he worked all sorts of jobs: kitchen assistant, car washer, even pedaling as a bike taxi driver. His beloved father passed away when Jack was still a teenager. His mother struggled alone to send him to school, but the money was often tight. He recalled freezing nights, cycling tired clients home, returning with numb hands and feet. Many days he survived on dry bread and water, but his mind always echoed one phrase, keep going for mom for the future. And now that future was taking shape. Through love for Tu Tien and the tiny life growing. Every day inside her he smiled, eyes shining with hope. Dad, I'm about to become a father. I'll try to be the best dad I can. Be just like you were since. That day Jack and Tu Tien's life turned a new page. Every morning Jack stopped by her place to take her to work before heading to his company. He cared about every meal, every sleep of hers so much that sometimes she laughed, you care more than my grandma did back in the day, then you better take good care of yourself. I don't want my wife and baby to lack anything. Every weekend they went to the hospital for regular checkups. Jack always took notes of the doctor's advice, from foods to avoid to the best sleeping positions. Every night before sleep he whispered to her belly, hello little one. Today I drew a beautiful bridge. When you grow up I'll take you to see it. Toten looked at him, tears rolling down. She once thought she would be alone forever, but now she had a man who loved her completely, for both her and their child. At the end of the 4th month, during a routine checkup, the doctor noticed the gentle sizzle of a frying pan echoed through the cozy kitchen. Lytutien, her face glowing with serenity, deftly flipped an egg while the aroma of toasted bread wafted in the air. She was preparing breakfast for two for herself and Jack, the man she loved deeply. Her gently rounded belly was a quiet testament to the love they shared, an unexpected yet treasured gift. While she prepared Jack's favorite French dialects, Tu Tien hummed a familiar tune, savoring the peaceful morning. She had once lived in fear and loneliness, but ever since Jack walked into her life, everything had changed. Suddenly there were 3 soft knocks at the door. Tu Tien paused, wiped her hands, and went to open it. Standing there was an older man with graying hair, a gaunt face, and eyes that held a terrifying familiarity. She froze. It was the fake father who had vanished decades ago, the one who haunted her youth with a nightmarish memory she could never erase. Tuts, your father, please forgive me. I was wrong. I can't bear the guilt anymore. I have nowhere else to go, he said, falling to his knees, tears streaming down his face. She stepped back, heart pounding, as if the past was resurrecting right before her eyes. The peaceful morning in the kitchen shattered. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone and dialed Jack. Jack, he's back. He says he wants forgiveness. On the other end, Jack's voice dropped into a cold, firm tone. Toten, listen to me. No forgiveness. He's a criminal. Don't let your heart waver. I'm coming right now. Don't do anything. Toten sank into a chair, cradling her belly protectively. Pain and confusion tore through her. This man who once called himself her father had returned, but not to love her. He was back to destroy her peace. Jack arrived in less than 10 minutes, flanked by 2 police officers, always dignified in appearance. As a CEO, his eyes this time were icy, like a judge ready to sentence. You have no right to be near her, Jack said, voice sharp as steel. You're a wanted man. This ends today. The man tried to run. His steps were clumsy and frantic, like someone escaping hell itself, but the police were ready. Within seconds, he was subdued and handcuffed. As he was escorted away, he looked back at Tu Tien and cried out, I'm sorry, please don't hand me over. I truly regret everything. Tu Tien turned her face away, unwilling to hear more. She leaned into Jack's shoulder, letting silent tears fall. She wasn't heartless, but she had been hurt too deeply to forgive. A week later, Tu Tien and Jack walked into the courtroom. Media swarmed them, cameras flashing, curious eyes dissecting her every move. The victim of a scandalous case from years ago, Tu Tien sat in the courtroom, her heart tight in her chest. The man at the defendant's stand looked like a shadow, no longer powerful, no longer pretending to be gentle, just a broken man burdened by guilt. The defendant impersonated the victim's biological father and used that position to sexually abuse Lytutien when she was only 14. The psychological, physical, and moral consequences are severe. The judge's voice rang out. The trial lasted over 4 hours, with horrifying details revisited. Tu Tien trembled slightly, gripping Jack's hand as her only anchor when the sentence was handed down. The defendant was led away. He looked back with a desperate gaze, but said nothing. He knew it was over. Tu Tien cried, not from sorrow, but for the lost hopes of a childhood that never truly was. That night, Jack brought Tu Tien home. She barely spoke, sitting by the window, hand on her belly. She felt a soft kick, a sign of life she had cried for. The past, but she was also carrying the future. Jack sat beside her, handing her a warm glass of milk. You need rest, don't let your mind sink into darkness. You have me, and you have our child. Late at night, when Tu Tien had fallen asleep, Jack was still in his study as a CEO and structural engineer. From the start, Tu Tien's eyes welled up. I was so afraid you'd think it was too fast. Nonsense, Jack's mother said. My son has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you. That's all the timing I need. They sat down to celebrate a simple meal of grilled chicken, sticky rice, and fresh fruit. Laughter echoed in the small house that night as Jack walked to Tien home under the pale light of street lamps. She squeezed his hand. I think your mom really loves me. She does, Jack said, almost as much as I do. The car hummed gently as it rolled through the quiet suburban streets. Tu Tien sat in the passenger seat, fingers smoothing her white blouse next to her. Jack looked calm, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for hers. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Just feels unreal. They arrived at the ward office, a modest cream-colored building. Inside, the air was cool, and the clerk welcomed them with a smile. Tu Tien signed first. Her name bloomed on the paper. Jack signed next, deliberate and firm. Congratulations, the clerk said. You are now officially husband and wife. They laughed and hugged, then posed with their red marriage booklets. As they stepped into the sunlight, Tu Tien whispered, I still feel like I'm dreaming. Then let's not wake up, Jack said. But across the street, unnoticed, stood a man watching. Tu Tien's former father-in-law. He clenched his jaw and turned away. Jack's pickup truck rolled into Tu Tien's farm. The land still bore signs of the storm. Fallen branches, crooked fences, but the peace was undeniable. They changed clothes and got to work. Jack climbed the roof. Tu Tien swept the porch and mended nets. By sunset, lanterns glowed around the porch. They ate stir-fried vegetables and rice on the steps, barefoot and content. At night, they lay in the bedroom, skin to skin, hearts beating in rhythm. You're safe now, Jack whispered. I know, she replied. I love you too. The stars kept silent watch as they drifted into sleep. Jack's mother moved through her house like a whirlwind, hanging lanterns, folding invitations, adjusting flower vases. Tu Tien watched in awe. I've never had a real wedding. You will now, Jack's mom said, and it'll be beautiful. Jack arrived to find the two women debating over flowers. Peace. His mom insisted. Orchids. Tu Tien countered. I'm marrying both of you, apparently, Jack said, chuckling. That night, as he walked to Tien home, he said, this is more than I ever imagined. She smiled. For me too. The glass tower of Hong construction glinted in the morning sun. Tu Tien walked into the office in a navy skirt and white blouse, nerves buzzing. Jack led her through her first day, explaining spreadsheets, designs, client calls over lunch in the rooftop garden. She said, I feel like a student again. Then I'm your favorite teacher, he joked. By late afternoon, she had already drafted her first email to a client. I want to be useful, she said. You already are, Jack replied, and I'm proud. Letter arrived, no sender, just rough handwriting. You think marrying a rich man erases the past? People don't forget debts. Tu Tien's hands trembled. She hid the letter. Jack found it by accident that evening. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, hurt but calm. I didn't want to bring poison into our life, she whispered. Jack took her hand. Let him try. No one threatens you anymore. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. The wedding was simple laughter, lanterns dancing under the tamarind tree. Jack and Tu Tien exchanged vows in front of family and friends. Life bloomed. Tu Tien designed homes for flood-prone villages. Jack supported her every step. Together, they visited schools, helped build new roofs, and taught children how to dream bigger. One afternoon on the porch of the farmhouse, Jack said, let's make this our real home. She leaned on his shoulder. I never wanted anything else. And far away, thunder rolled, not a storm, but rain promised a thirsty land. A new season was beginning. They were ready. Was there a moment that touched your heart? A scene that reminded you of your own life, or someone you know? Speech balloon. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Red heart. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapter or a brand new love story. Your support means the world to us and keeps these heartfelt stories coming. Bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new video drops. Thank you for watching, and as always, love more, judge less. Hello. Foreign okay. 4. Speech. Foreign speech, foreign speech, foreign speech. Hello. The air inside the abandoned house was stale heavy, with dust and decay, faint streaks of sunlight, pierced through broken wooden slats casting jagged shadows across the moldy floor in the far corner. Bound to a rusted metal chair with ropes that bit into her wrists and ankles sat Mrs. Lamb Jack's mother. Her silver-streaked hair was disheveled, her blouse stained with dirt and torn at the sleeve. Despite the fear etched into her features, her eyes burned with quiet defiance. 3 men loomed nearby, burly, tattooed, and reeking of cigarette smoke. One of them, the apparent leader, paced in front of her, tapping a metal pipe against his open palm. "You're lucky we haven't gagged you," he sneered, crouching down to her level. "But don't push it, old lady." Mrs. Lamb looked him straight in the eye. "My son will find me," she said calmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "Oh, we're counting on that." The leader smirked. He stood up and turned to the others. "Make sure she doesn't try anything. Stupid boss wants her alive." The boss, Mrs. Lamb knew exactly who that meant. On Thursday he'd been a persistent figure in her life for over a year. Now a widower with an unhealthy obsession at first. His attention seemed polite, even charming, helping carry groceries, offering to fix a leaky faucet, sending gifts. But when she gently refused his advances, things turned. His eyes grew cold. The gifts kept coming, but now with notes laced in passive-aggressive threats. "I don't like being ignored," he once said to her with a forced smile. She had brushed it off at the time. Now, sitting here in a rotting warehouse with 3 criminals watching her every move, she realized she had underestimated him dangerously. So a rat skittered past her feet, her stomach turned. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. She had been about to start preparing lunch when the men barged into her home. One of them had covered her mouth before she could scream. Another had grabbed her arms. They were swift and brutal. No one had seen a thing. Mrs. Lamb tried not to think about what time it was now. She could only hope Jack would notice something was wrong. She had always known her son to be sharp, methodical, protective, and quietly intense. He rarely called during work hours, but today he said he'd phone around noon to ask about lunch. That call hadn't happened yet, had it? She closed her eyes briefly, trying to steady her nerves. She had to believe Jack would come. He always did. From outside, the sound of a motorcycle echoed down the dirt road. One of the thugs looked out through a cracked board. "Just a delivery guy," he muttered. The leader barked back, "Keep your eyes open. He could have the place watched." Mrs. Lamb shifted in her seat, her wrists ached, and her lower back throbbed from the awkward position, but her spirit was far from broken. If she had learned anything as a mother, it was resilience, and she would hold on for Jack. The mid-afternoon sun cast long streaks of light through the tall windows of the construction site office. Jack stood near a large blueprint spread out across the table, pointing out key features of a new residential complex to Tu Tien, who stood beside him, jotting down notes on her tablet. She was focused, determined, her brows furrowed slightly in concentration as Jack explained load distribution and foundation calculations. "You see this corner," Jack said, tapping on the paper with a pen. "We're shifting the support column by 20 centimeters to allow more open space in the living room. That way it feels more spacious without compromising structural safety." Tu Tien nodded. "Got it. I'll revise the sketch and adjust the material quantities accordingly." "Good," Jack said with a soft smile. "You're picking this up fast." Her lips curled into a proud smile, but before she could reply, Jack's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen. It was noon, right on time. "Excuse me for a second," he said, and picked up his phone. Pressing the contact labeled "Mom" call rang. Once, 3 times, no answer. Jack frowned slightly, but tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just busy cooking or had stepped out to the garden. He waited a few seconds, then redialed. Still no answer. This time the call went to voicemail. He ended the call and muttered, "That's odd." Tu Tien looked up from her tablet. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, probably. I usually call my mom around this time. She always answers," Jack said, but his tone was already laced with concern. He stared at the phone again, then redialed for the 3rd time. No answer. He walked to the window, the phone still in his hand. "She was supposed to make lunch today. I asked her to prepare the chicken soup she likes, but she wouldn't just ignore my calls. Maybe her phone's dead." Tu Tien offered gently, sensing his anxiety starting to build. "Maybe," Jack murmured, but the knot forming in his stomach told him otherwise. His Mother never ignored his calls. She was punctual, thoughtful, and always responded, even if just to say she'd call back later. This silence was wrong. He tried calling the house phone, still nothing. His jaw clenched. He walked back to the table and quickly gathered his keys, phone, and jacket. I'm heading home. Something doesn't feel right. I'm coming with you, Tu Tien said without hesitation. Jack looked at her, grateful. Let's go. They left the office in a rush, Jack's mind already racing through possibilities, though he tried to suppress the worst-case scenarios. Maybe she just went for a walk. Maybe she fell asleep and left her phone somewhere, but something in his gut screamed, no, something is wrong. As they pulled out of the parking lot and onto the main road, Jack pressed the call button again, over and over, hoping each time for that familiar voice to pick up. Never did. The tires of Jack's black SUV crunched over the gravel driveway as he pulled up in front of his family's countryside home. The house stood quietly under the afternoon sun, its white painted exterior glowing warmly, deceptively peaceful, but Jack's heart was pounding in his chest like a warning bell. He killed the engine and was out of the car before it even stopped fully. Tu Tien followed quickly, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The front gate was still unlocked, and the small flower pots his mother tended to daily line the porch steps untouched. Mom, Jack called out as he ran up the wooden stairs and pushed the front door open. No answer. Mom, it's me. Are you home? He called again, louder this time. Silence. He stepped into the living room, his boots thudding heavily against the wooden floor. Everything seemed normal. The table neatly set for lunch, a pot of uncooked rice sitting beside the cooker, vegetables half chopped on the cutting board. The kitchen knife was still beside them, as if she had just stepped away mid-preparation. But where was she? Tu Tien entered behind him and looked around. This doesn't look right. Jack nodded slowly. She wouldn't leave everything like this. She's meticulous about finishing what she starts. She never just walks out. He moved swiftly, checking the bedrooms, the backyard, even the garden shed. Mom, he shouted again, his voice cracking slightly. Still nothing in the corner of the hallway. Jack noticed something, a mug shattered into 3 pieces on the floor. It looked like it had been dropped in a hurry, tea stains still fresh against the tile. Next to it was her favorite scarf, wrinkled and lying strangely out of place. Jack froze. He slowly crouched down, picked up the scarf, and clenched it in his hand. His throat tightened. Tu Tien came to his side. Jack, something happened here. He didn't respond immediately. His mind was running too fast. He was trying to make sense of everything. The abandoned food, the shattered mug, the scarf. His mother wouldn't leave all this behind. She wouldn't leave him without a word, and now fear was beginning to bloom like poison in his chest. She was taken, Jack whispered, barely able to say the words aloud. Tu Tien's eyes widened. You think she was kidnapped? I don't know. Who or why? Jack stood up abruptly, his hands now balled led into fists. But this wasn't voluntary. She didn't just walk out of here. Someone came into our house. He pulled out his phone, his thumb trembling slightly as he dialed. Who are you calling? Lou. Tien asked. The police. The police station was cool and sterile, the air tinged with a faint scent of old paper and disinfectant. Phones rang in the distance, and the low murmur of officers talking over reports filled the background. Jack stormed through the front doors with Tu Tien close behind, his expression rigid, purposeful. There was no hesitation in his steps as he headed straight to the front desk. A young officer behind the glass partition looked up. Good afternoon, sir. How can my mother is missing, Jack said, voice sharp and urgent. I need to report a possible abduction. The officer's fingers froze over the keyboard. I see. Okay, please take a seat and we'll have someone. No, Jack said firmly. I don't have time to sit. Something's wrong. I need to speak with a senior officer now. The intensity in his eyes must have said enough. The officer blinked, then picked up the phone. A few moments later, a tall man in his late 40s appeared from a side door. He wore a plain blue shirt with a badge clipped to his belt. His face was calm but alert, already sizing Jack up as someone not prone to overreaction. Lieutenant Vin, he said, extending a hand. You're the one with the missing person? Yes, Jack Tran. This is Lytutien, Jack said, shaking his hand. Briefly, my mother Lam Tin didn't answer my calls. This afternoon, I drove home and found the house unlocked. Her cooking was halfway done. A mug was broken on the floor. Her scarf was lying there like it was dropped in a hurry. She's not answering any calls. Something happened. Lieutenant Vin nodded Slowly, all right, please come with me, they were. Led into a small interview room, Jack recounted everything, the timeline, what he saw at the house, how out of character his mother's behavior was. Tu Tien supported every detail, adding what she noticed as well: she would never leave her phone off. Jack emphasized she never forgets to lock the gate, and she definitely wouldn't just walk out. In the middle of preparing lunch, Vin took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Jack finished, the lieutenant sat back thinking, does your mother have any enemies, anyone who might want to hurt her? Jack hesitated. Not enemies, but there's someone, a man named On Thursday. He's been bothering her for months. He wanted a relationship, and when she rejected him, he didn't take it well. He's shown up uninvited, sent her unwanted gifts. She told him to stop. I thought it was over, but maybe I was wrong. Vin looked up sharply. Do you have his full name? Yes, Thursday Tran. He's a retired contractor. Used to live across town, but I think he moved recently. Vince stood. That's a lead worth checking. We'll send officers to your house to secure the scene. I'll put out an immediate alert and assign a team to start a field investigation. If this man's involved, we'll find out. Jack rose with him. Please, I'll do whatever it takes. Just find her. We will, Vince said firmly. But Jack, if this is a kidnapping, you need to be prepared. There may be a ransom involved. Don't negotiate on your own. If anyone contacts you, come to us immediately. I understand, Jack replied as they left the room. Tu Tien placed a gentle hand on Jack's arm. We're doing everything we can. Your mom is strong. She'll hold on. Jack gave a small nod, but his eyes were distant, already calculating, already preparing for whatever came next. Back at Jack's house, the sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the driveway as two police vehicles pulled up in front of the quiet home. Yellow tape soon lined the gate and front porch, marking it as an official investigation site. Officers moved with efficiency, snapping photos, collecting fingerprints, and bagging potential evidence. The kitchen, the hallway, the shattered mug, everything was being documented. Jack stood off to the side with Tu Tien and Lieutenant Vin. Though Jack had been through high-stress situations before: construction emergencies, boardroom crisis, nothing compared to this. The knowing unknown of whether his mother was alive or in danger. She was here, Jack said, quietly gesturing to the scarf now stored in a sealed evidence bag. Just hours ago, that scarf was always around her neck in the afternoons. Vin nodded. We're going to review nearby CCTV footage from traffic and businesses. If they transported her in a vehicle, we may get lucky. One of the forensic officers approached, holding something in a plastic bag. Sir, we found this under the porch railing, caught in the wood. It was a torn button, dark plastic with a scratched symbol engraved on its surface. Jack narrowed his eyes. That's not hers. Vin took the bag and studied it. You're sure? She wears embroidered blouses, traditional ones. They don't use buttons like this. That looks like something off a utility jacket. Good eye, Vin said. We'll get this to forensics. Meanwhile, another officer returned with a clipboard. Lieutenant, we canvassed the neighbors. One of them, a delivery guy from across the street, says he saw a black van parked here around noon. Said it looked suspicious because the driver kept the engine running and never stepped out. It drove off quickly. About 10 minutes later, Jack's heartbeat quickened. Did he get a license plate? Partial plate. We're running it through our system now. That could be it, Vince said, then turned to Jack. Looks like your instincts were dead on. An hour later, the lead officer from the cyber investigation unit joined them. He held up his tablet and spoke urgently. Lieutenant, we might have something. Our traffic cam team caught a black van matching that partial plate moving east. About 20 minutes after it left here, it passed a gas station at an angle where the front camera caught a clearer shot of the driver. He turned the tablet to face them. The image was slightly grainy but unmistakable. Jack recognized the man immediately. That's one of Thursday's old workers. He used to do electrical jobs. I've seen him at his house before. That confirms a connection. Vince said. We'll issue a warrant to bring him in. If he's involved, he may lead us straight to where your mother is being held. Jack clenched his fists, feeling a rush of both fear and hope. A clue, finally, a thread they could follow. As the sun disappeared beyond the hills, the lights of police vehicles lit up the darkening property, illuminating the shadows that had crept into Jack's world. And somewhere out there, his mother was waiting. Night had fallen by the time Jack and Tu Tien returned to his office downtown. It was far from a normal workday. His desk, usually cluttered with blueprints and site reports, now sat empty except for his phone. A notebook filled with police contacts and a laptop, showing real-time surveillance updates from the investigation team. Tu Tien handed him a glass of water. "You should drink something," she said gently. Jack nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His eyes never left his phone, which sat silent and unmoving, and then it rang. The caller ID showed unknown number. Jack's blood turned cold. He immediately answered. "This is Jack." The voice on the other end was deep, distorted, run through a filter. "Jack Tran, coach boy, I assume you've noticed your mother's missing." Jack's grip tightened on the phone. "Where is she?" "She's alive for now," the voice replied coolly, "but that depends on you." Tuten stood frozen nearby, eyes locked on Jack's every movement. "What do you want?" Jack said, his voice calm but sharp. $5 billion dong cash tomorrow morning. Loan no police, no funny business. Well, call with drop off instructions. Jack's voice was ice. "If you hurt her, we won't." The voice interrupted. "If you listen. If you don't, well, I can't promise she'll stay in one piece. You have until 9 a.m. Don't be late." Blick. The call ended. Jack lowered the phone slowly. His jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He looked at Tu Tien. "They want $5 billion tomorrow morning alone." Jack. She stepped toward him, but he was already grabbing his coat. "We need to tell the police right now." They arrived at the police station within 10 minutes. Lieutenant Vin and his team were already working late when Jack recounted the phone call word for word. Vin didn't hesitate. "We've dealt with these types before," the lieutenant said. "Their threats are calculated to scare you into compliance, but if we play this smart, we can turn the drop into a trap." "They want me to go alone," Jack said. "They'll know if there are cops nearby." Vin nodded. "Well, prepare a decoy drop. Use unmarked vehicles, hidden surveillance gear, tiny GPS trackers. We can place them inside the cash bag or your clothes. They call again, stall, well, trace the number. If they slip, and if they move my mother again before we get there." Jack asked, voice heavy with worry. "We won't let that happen, but Jack, they're watching you. They might even be watching this station, so whatever we do it clean." Jack nodded grimly. "I'll follow your lead. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "That we bring her home." It was barely past dawn on the next morning, but Jack had already been awake for hours. He sat alone in his study, dressed in a plain black jacket and jeans, nothing that would draw attention. On the coffee table before him was a black duffel bag stuffed with stacks of bundled bills. Only half of it was real money. The other half was filler, padded to give the illusion of full weight. It was a carefully staged, prepared by the police. A tiny GPS tracker had been sewn into one of the seams, and another was hidden in the inner sole of Jack's shoe. He was wired with a discreet mic, and a tiny earpiece allowed Lieutenant Vin to speak to him remotely. Jack. Vin's calm voice came through the earpiece. "Remember, no sudden moves. Follow their instructions, and no matter what happens, do not act alone. We're watching." Jack's jaw tightened. "Understood." At exactly 8:27 a.m. the unknown number rang again. He answered immediately. "Good morning, Mr. CEO, the kidnapper said. "Hope you slept well. You're going to take that pretty little bag and head north, Highway 8, just past the bend before the old textile warehouse. Park by the row of pine trees. Get out and wait." Jack didn't reply. He hung up and grabbed the bag. Tuten stood at the door, her eyes filled with worry. "Be careful." "I will," he said. "I'll bring her back." Outside, the unmarked police van trailed him at a distance, its tinted windows hiding a team of tactical officers. Drones were already in the sky, tracking from above, and plainclothes officers were scattered along the highway like shadows from the sky to the pavement. Jack was covered, but the tension was suffocating. He drove steadily, hands firm on the wheel, breathing measured. At 9:01 a.m., he reached the designated location. The trees were quiet, the breeze still, just as he stepped out of the car and stood beside the pine trunks with a bag in hand. A second vehicle approached. A beat up silver sedan. The window rolled down halfway. A masked man in sunglasses leaned out and barked. "Put the bag on the ground." Back. No talking. Jack did as instructed, setting the duffel on the dirt road. Then the masked man stepped out, keeping his head low. Glancing around nervously, he grabbed the bag and tossed it into the back seat. At that moment, another voice crackled through Jack's earpiece. "We've got eyes. Hold position." The sedan sped off, tires screeching as it turned back down the road. Jack stood still, adrenaline pulsing through him. "They're moving," Vin said, "drones tracking them now." Inside the command center, Vin watched as the GPS beacon lit up the map on his tablet. The car was moving fast, weaving through side roads trying to avoid main streets, but it was no use. Every turn they made, the police had already anticipated their heading toward the outskirts. A tech officer reported abandoned chicken farm. Off Route 12, Vin radioed his team, all units move and maintain stealth. I want eyes on that building. Before we breach, Jack paced in place, heart racing. Still standing where he was told. Did they lead you to her? Yes, came Vin's steady voice. We're moving now, stay put. Meanwhile, at the edge of Route 12, the silver sedan slowed and turned off onto a narrow gravel path surrounded by overgrown weeds and rusting fences. The car pulled up beside a weather-beaten building, an abandoned poultry farm with shattered windows and a collapsed roof. At one end, inside, Jack's mother sat on a stained chair, tied and gagged, but still alert. Her hands trembled, her face bruised, but her eyes, they burned with defiance. Two thugs paced nearby, one of them holding a crowbar, the other nervously checking his watch. Boss said the cash is secure, one of them muttered. We wait until night, then ditch the woman. Not if we move first, said a deep voice. From the shadows, suddenly the doors burst open. Police, drop your weapons. Flashbangs shattered, the silence flooding the room with light and noise. Tactical officers rushed in, pinning the thugs to the ground as they struggled and cursed. One of them tried to run, only to be taken down by a flying tackle. Within minutes, the building was secure. Jack's mother was quickly untied, and a female officer knelt beside her. You're safe now, ma'am, we've got you. Tears filled her eyes. Jack, is he okay? He's waiting for you. The raid was fast, but the aftermath felt slow. Like the stillness after a storm, the criminals had been subdued, handcuffed, and dragged out of the decrepit poultry farm, one by one, flanked by armed officers. The silver sedan used in the drop-off had been impounded, and every inch of the abandoned building was now being searched for evidence. Lieutenant Vin stood near the police van, speaking into his radio. All suspects in custody. We have the woman. She's shaken but alive. He turned as Jack's car pulled up, its tires skidding slightly on the gravel. Jack jumped out before it had fully stopped. Where is she? His voice cracked from the weight of hours of fear. She's inside, safe. Vin placed a hand on his shoulder. But be gentle, she's been through a lot. Jack nodded and ran toward the building, ignoring the flashing cameras of the local reporters already gathering at the edge of the road. Inside, he found her seated on a blanket the paramedics had laid out on the concrete floor. She looked older somehow, not from age, but from trauma. Her wrists bore rope burns, and her blouse was torn at the collar. Yet the moment she saw him, her entire body relaxed. Jack, he dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around her, his voice breaking. Mom, oh my God, you're okay. She held him tightly, whispering, I knew you'd find me. I knew you would. Behind them, Tu Tien had arrived as while standing quietly in the doorway, eyes misting with relief. She didn't interrupt, she just watched the way Jack trembled as he held his mother, the quiet gratitude in both their voices. The scene was emotional even for the officers watching. A paramedic approached gently. We need to take her in for a full checkup. She's dehydrated and she has a bruised rib, but there are no signs of internal injuries. Jack nodded. Take care of her. I'll be right behind you. As they helped his mother into the ambulance, Jack turned to Lieutenant Vin. Did you find him Thursday? No, not yet. He wasn't here. But we have enough evidence now. The fingerprints on the scarf, the call records, the button from his hired man's jacket. Will issue a formal arrest warrant by this evening. Jack's eyes darkened. Make sure you get him. He planned this. We will. Vin promised. He made it personal. That was his mistake. One of the handcuffed men, the driver from the sedan, was being dragged toward a squad car nearby. Jack walked over and looked him in the eyes. You threatened the wrong family. The man didn't reply. But Jack saw the flicker of fear. It wasn't because of Jack's power. It was because the man realized they'd lost the whole plan, the money, the leverage, all gone as the criminals were taken away, and the road cleared of sirens and chaos. Jack walked back to the ambulance. His mother was lying on the stretcher, hooked up to Infor, but awake and smiling faintly. When she saw him again, Tuten stood beside her, holding her hand. We'll go with you to the hospital. Jack got in next to her and squeezed her hand gently. We're going home soon, Mom, I promise. 2 days later, the air around the house had changed. What was once filled with dread and silence now felt like a sanctuary of warmth. Jack's mother had been discharged from the hospital with a clean bill of health and strict orders to rest. The bruises on her skin were fading, but the emotional scars remained. Jack had personally cleaned every room in the house, scrubbing away the memories of that terrible day. He'd even repaired the broken ceramic mug. She dropped the one she always used to drink tea in the afternoons. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away. Now it sat on the kitchen shelf like a fragile reminder of resilience. That afternoon, Jack guided her gently out to the garden. A soft blanket was draped over her shoulders, and a thermos of warm ginseng tea sat on the table. Beside them, Tu Tien was already there, arranging a small bouquet of flowers she picked from the backyard. Jack's mother looked around, breathing in the familiar scent of basil and jasmine. It's strange, she whispered, being home after thinking I'd never see this place again. Jack sat beside her, his voice tender. You don't have to be afraid anymore. We caught everyone involved. The police are still searching for Thursday, but his network is shattered. He'll be found. She nodded, but her eyes welled up with tears. Jack, I was so scared, not for me, for you. I thought if they hurt me, you would blame yourself forever. Jack leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. No, the only thing I would have blamed myself for is not doing enough, but we made it. You're here. I still see that room, she admitted, voice trembling. That broken window, that man's voice yelling every time I close my eyes. Tu Tien knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. It's okay to feel that, but you're not alone. We'll help you through it, every step. Jack's mother gave her a soft, grateful smile. You've been a blessing to our family. That evening they had dinner together, not at a fancy restaurant, not with celebration, but with quiet gratitude. Tu Tien cooked a simple meal, rice porridge with mushrooms, fried tofu, and pickled radish. Jack's mother's comfort food. As the evening deepened, Jack helped his mother to her room. Before she went in, she turned back and touched his cheek. You remind me so much of your father, she said softly, strong but kind. He'd be proud of the man you've become. Jack held her hand. I just want to protect the people I love. She smiled, then disappeared behind the bedroom door. Later, Jack and Tu Tien sat outside beneath the stars. The wind was gentle, and the sound of crickets filled the night air. Tu Tien leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever wonder what life would be like if you weren't CEO, if we weren't always fighting battles? Jack chuckled lightly. I do, but then I think even if I wasn't, I'd still find myself in moments like this right here with you. With her, you saved her. Tu Tien whispered. You never gave up. I never will, he said quietly. The house behind them stood quietly under the moonlight, no longer haunted by fear, but held together by love and survival. And somewhere deep inside, Jack knew they would all be okay eventually.